Welcome to Blurr, your storytelling channel where classic tales come alive with clarity and charm. Today, we explore The Open Window, a celebrated short story written by the witty British author Saki, real name H. Munro. Known for his sharp humor, clever dialogue, and surprising twists, Saki's works often highlight the quirks of society and human behavior. His writing is crisp, playful, and filled with subtle satire that keeps readers entertained while also making them think. The Open Window is one of his most famous pieces, admired for its brilliant use of imagination, timing, and conversational humor. Saki had a unique talent for turning ordinary situations into extraordinary moments through smart storytelling. His stories usually revolve around social settings, unexpected events, and characters with intriguing personalities. Let's begin the story, The Open Window. "My aunt will be down presently, Mr. Nuttall," said a very self-possessed young lady of 15. "In the meantime, you must try and put up with me." Frampton Nuttall endeavored to say the correct something which should duly flatter the niece of the moment, without unduly discounting the aunt that was to come. Privately, he doubted more than ever whether these formal visits on a succession of total strangers would do much towards helping the nerve cure which he was supposed to be undergoing. "I know how it will be," his sister had said when he was preparing to migrate to this rural retreat. "You will bury yourself down there and not speak to a living soul, and your nerves will be worse than ever from moping. I shall just give you letters of introduction to all the people I know there. Some of them, as far as I can remember, were quite nice." Frampton wondered whether Mrs. Sappleton, the lady to whom he was presenting one of the letters of introduction, came into the nice division. "Do you know many of the people round here?" asked the niece, when she judged that they had had sufficient silent communion. "Hardly a soul," said Frampton. "My sister was staying here, at the rectory, you know, some 4 years ago, and she gave me letters of introduction to some of the people here." He made the last statement in a tone of distinct regret. "Then you know practically nothing about my aunt," pursued the self-possessed young lady. "Only her name and address," admitted the caller. He was wondering whether Mrs. Sappleton was in the married or widowed state. An undefinable something about the room seemed to suggest masculine habitation. "Her great tragedy happened just 3 years ago," said the child. "That would be since your sister's time." "Her tragedy?" asked Frampton. Somehow in this restful country spot tragedies seemed out of place. "You may wonder why we keep that window wide open on an October afternoon," said the niece, indicating a large French window that opened onto a lawn. "It is quite warm for the time of the year," said Frampton. "But has that window got anything to do with the tragedy?" Out through that window, 3 years ago to a day, her husband and her 2 young brothers went off for their day's shooting. They never came back. In crossing the moor to their favorite snipe shooting ground, they were all 3 engulfed in a treacherous piece of bog. It had been that dreadful wet summer, you know, and places that were safe in other years gave way suddenly without warning. Their bodies were never recovered. That was the dreadful part of it. Here the child's voice lost its self-possessed note and became falteringly human. "Poor aunt always thinks that they will come back someday, they and the little brown spaniel that was lost with them, and walk in at that window just as they used to do. That is why the window is kept open every evening till it is quite dusk. Poor dear aunt, she has often told me how they went out, her husband with his white waterproof coat over his arm, and Ronnie, her youngest brother, singing 'Birdie, Why Do You Bound?' as he always did to tease her, because she said it got on her nerves. Do you know, sometimes on still, quiet evenings like this, I almost get a creepy feeling that they will all walk in through that window." She broke off with a little shudder. It was a relief to Frampton when the aunt bustled into the room with a whirl of apologies for being late in making her appearance. "I hope Vera has been amusing you," she said. "She has been very interesting," said Frampton. "I hope you don't mind the open window," said Mrs. Sappleton briskly. "My husband and brothers will be home directly from shooting, and they always come in this way. They've been out for snipe in the marshes today, so they'll make a fine mess over my poor carpets. So like you menfolk, isn't it?" She rattled on cheerfully about the shooting and the scarcity of birds, and the prospects for duck in the winter. To Frampton, it was all purely horrible. He made a desperate, but only partially successful effort to turn the talk on to a less ghastly topic. He was conscious that his hostess was giving him only a fragment of her attention, and her eyes were constantly straying past him to the open window and the lawn beyond. It was certainly an unfortunate coincidence that he should have paid his visit on this tragic anniversary. The doctors agree in ordering me complete rest, an absence of mental excitement, and avoidance of anything in the nature of violent physical exercise, announced Frampton, who labored under the tolerably widespread delusion that total strangers and chance acquaintances are hungry for the least detail of one's ailments and infirmities, their cause and cure. On the matter of diet, they are not so much in agreement, he continued. No, said Mrs. Sappleton, in a voice which only replaced a yawn at the last moment. Then she suddenly brightened into alert attention, but not to what Frampton was saying. Here they are at last, she cried, just in time for tea, and don't they look as if they were muddy up to the eyes? Frampton shivered slightly and turned towards the niece with a look intended to convey sympathetic comprehension. The child was staring out through the open window with a dazed horror in her eyes. In a chill shock of nameless fear, Frampton swung round in his seat and looked in the same direction. In the deepening twilight, 3 figures were walking across the lawn towards the window. They all carried guns under their arms, and one of them was additionally burdened with a white coat hung over his shoulders. A tired brown spaniel kept close at their heels. Noiselessly they neared the house, and then a hoarse young voice chanted out of the dusk. I said, Bertie, why do you bound? Frampton grabbed wildly at his stick and hat. The hall door, the gravel drive, and the front gate were dimly noted stages in his headlong retreat. A cyclist coming along the road had to run into the hedge to avoid imminent collision. Here we are, my dear, said the bearer of the white mackintosh, coming in through the window, fairly muddy, but most of it's dry. Who was that who bolted out as we came up? A most extraordinary man, a Mr. Nuttall, said Mrs. Sappleton, could only talk about his illnesses, and dashed off without a word of goodbye or apology when you arrived. One would think he had seen a ghost. I expect it was the spaniel, said the niece calmly. He told me he had a horror of dogs. He was once hunted into a cemetery, somewhere on the banks of the Ganges, by a pack of pariah dogs, and had to spend the night in a newly dug grave with the creatures snarling and grinning and foaming just above him, enough to make anyone lose their nerve. Romance at short notice was her speciality. Author Saki Hector Hugh Munro was a British writer known for his sharp wit, dark humor, and twist-ending short stories. Born in 1870 in Burma, he grew up in England after his mother's early death. Before becoming a writer, he worked as a journalist and traveled widely, which shaped his clever observational style. Saki's stories often poke fun at upper-class society and human foolishness. He died in World War I in 1916, leaving behind a legacy of smart, humorous, and surprising fiction. Themes of story, imagination vs. reality, how the human mind believes stories instantly, deception, playful manipulation and trickery, social anxiety, the pressure of polite conversations and nervous personalities, youthful mischief, the power of a child's creativity when taken seriously. Setting, the story takes place in an English countryside house, a quiet, respectable environment where unexpected humor unfolds. The calm setting makes the twist even more effective. Point of view, the story is told in third-person limited, following Frampton Nuttall's perspective. This helps the reader feel his confusion and fear, just as he experiences it. Characters and their importance. Vera, a smart, mischievous teenage girl whose creativity drives the whole story. Frampton Nuttall, a nervous visitor, whose reactions create the story's humor. Mrs. Sappleton, the polite hostess, unaware of Vera's prank. Mr. Sappleton and the men, their sudden entry triggers the comic climax. Each character adds to the contrast between calm manners and shocking humor. Historical context, written in the early 1900s, the story reflects British Edwardian-era manners and social visits, importance of etiquette and polite conversation, a society fascinated by ghost stories and superstition. Criticism, critics admire Saki for brilliant, concise storytelling, clever use of misdirection, highlighting the absurdity of polite society. Some note that his humor can be sharp, but that sharpness is exactly what makes him memorable. Metaphor and symbol. The open window symbolizes openness to imagination, blurred lines between truth and fiction, and the gap between expectation and reality foggy countryside atmosphere suggests mystery and storytelling space. Irony, the story is filled with situational irony. The thing Frampton fears is not supernatural at all. It's completely normal. The audience discovers the truth only after he panics. Interesting fact, Saki wrote many stories with clever children who outsmart adults. Vera is one of his best examples of this playful pattern. Why it's relevant today, the story still matters because people still believe things quickly without checking facts. Social anxiety is common even now. Storytelling and imagination can still trick, surprise, and entertain us. It reminds us that not everything told with confidence is true. A perfect lesson for the digital age. Thank you for joining Blurr. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.